know that there has had to have been some sacrifice, whether it's time or nutrition or whatever it is.
Recording of myself talking about having a relationship with my chest.
I'm Ben Canning.
I'm Dave Kennedy.
And this is Hacking Health Podcast. Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 146 for Hacking Your Health Podcast with Ben and Dave. What's up, dude?
What is up, man? Good to be here. I feel like we just did this like 2 days ago. Oh, we did just do this 2 days ago. Yes.
But this is the most like back-to-back that we've done them. Usually it's like 10 days in between and I forget how to talk on the internet.
And the last podcast, I took my shirt off and you saw my chest. So things are getting crazy here at Hacking Your Health.
It's almost an OnlyFans page at this point.
That's right. No, I'm flying out tomorrow to go to Tampa to do the final sampling of the protein. So we'll definitely see how that's going. And
we also have a call today about the website and the design stuff. So like for everybody who's wondering what the fuck's going on, we are doing it. It is happening.
All that stuff's going down.
Hold on a second, just 1 second. Did I see that you posted in the Discord that we're getting a new WeHack.health website for the podcast?
No.
You said new site coming?
The store. We had like shirts and stuff in the store.
Okay, so do we need to do that?
We need to do. We got to rebrand the shirts. Yeah.
Okay, I'll put it on my list of stuff to do. I was like
doing this live. Yeah, no, we had the shirts already designed, dealing with the new logos. So we got to get that.
Okay,
we got to get that going.
Because a couple of people have actually said to me about shirts, and like the store's been down for much longer than I would like to admit, but we will get on.
Yep, absolutely. And then let's see, anything else? Well, Mason had basketball camp yesterday. And so he was gone. He's like in a college, like sleeping over with like, the kids and like the coaches and everything for basketball. And so Gavin didn't have anything. So of course we went to Airsoft on Tuesday. Nice. And I think there becomes a point where you're doing too much Airsoft because like we were done at because it goes till 10. It was like 6 to like 10. By like 8:30, we're like, dude, we're cooked. Let's just go. And so we just left, but it was a couple of really great games. But it's funny because I did Orange Theory today, and I compared the two stats. And Airsoft is definitely much more intensive than Orange Theory.
Okay, so we can just swap the two, right?
And things like that. Well, so I went to go work out today, and I'm like, why am I so sore this morning? Like what is going on? Like I just did a lift yesterday, and I'm like, oh yeah, Airsoft, duh. And it's I think a combination of Airsoft, HIIT training, and lifting, and incorporating that's new things that I've added into my regimen that I didn't have in there before. It's definitely hitting my recovery scores a little bit, but it's not touching my lifting, which is great. My lifting, I'm still strong, still going up. But it's funny because I just thought about this today, and I was going to ask you about it, and then just dawned on me why. So my check-in, which I'm going to do today, I'm going to be on average around 238, which is down from 243. I keep losing weight and we keep increasing calories. I'm like, well, why the F am I losing weight? This makes no sense.
Because you're doing 4 additional hours of fucking or something.
You're doing, 6 hours of HIIT training additionally a week, and everything else.
I just can't work it out. I just can't work it. It
doesn't make any sense. Like I'm eating the calories, and before I was gaining weight, and he just increased to 200 more, and I'm still losing weight. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm like, oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, makes a lot of sense. Got it.
So will we just increase your calories, or do we need to decrease the amount of Airsoft that you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to keep. Well, I think maybe on Airsoft days, raise my calories a little bit more. So
some intra Airsoft snacks.
Well, I eat we go to the gas station. And I go and I pick up usually an energy drink, which is, going to be no sugar calories, usually like 20 calories or something. And then I get Starburst, the Starburst minis, but only the strawberry flavors, which is just all sugar. And I get some combos, which is all carbs, and maybe a little bit of fat or something like that.
Hashtag
and so,
hacking your health and fitness advice. Energy drink that has absolutely no substance to it, just literal sugar from Starburst, and then combos that's just muck and carbohydrates.
Yes. And that gets me through. My energy levels stay peak throughout that entire time. But man, do I sweat. And I'm not a sweater on things. This is what's killing me. Like I don't sweat a ton. Even when I'm doing Orange Theory and stuff like that, I'm not drenched in sweat. I am so sweaty at Airsoft that my chest plate starts to stink. My helmet starts to stink. I'm having to wash these now every couple of weeks, and I'm airing them out when I get done. Like I take it out of the thing, I air them out and everything. They still stink like sweat. My clothes are completely drenched in like so probably too much information. But I wear this like it's like underwear, but it has like extra coating on it, like padding on your quads, but also for the groin area, which is the most important, obviously, to protect the boys. And and so it's got extra padding there. So because Mason got shot there and he was on the ground for like 20 minutes and then we had to leave. So like we all learned very quickly, do not come with any padding because it will be bad. And I got shot there yesterday. I was like, didn't even feel it. We're good. But with all that sweat and everything, I had forgotten, and I only have one of these. So I've since corrected the situation, but I only have one pair of these, this special type of underwear. And
so I wear them every day just in case.
So what I normally, plan it because I do my laundry on Wednesdays. I have my own laundry day. We all have our own laundry day. So Wednesdays is my laundry day. But obviously yesterday I was going to Airsoft on a Tuesday. So I didn't have clean underwear with my protector. So I had to do like a quick load of laundry right before I'm leaving. So it was kind of wet. So like, it wasn't the greatest feeling putting on like wet underwear and then sweating my ass off and then being wet again. So anyways, first world problems, obviously, with me, but
follow for more laundry advice.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to hit on that happened today at Orange Theory is there's this like younger kid, and I think he's just turned 21, so he's a new trainer there. He's a nice kid. He's very very fit, very knowledgeable, and the first day he's like, hey, maybe you should try. I'm like, hey man. I'm like, I deadlift 600. What do you deadlift? And he hasn't talked to me since. So like, we're good. But it's funny because we were doing this workout today, and I had two guys next to me. So Aaron's next to me, and there's a guy next to Aaron, and then there's a guy next to me, and those two guys kept staring at my treadmill trying to beat me. And it's funny because he kept like looking around Aaron, trying to look at my screen to see what miles per hour it was. I'm like, oh, these guys. And the problem was I was exhausted from yesterday. So like I was just in my head, I'm just like, oh, maybe I'll just do like a hill walking today because I'm just fucking tired. But of course, when they stare at me, it's a competition. I can't not back down. So then I'm doing like 9 as my base, 11 as my push, 12 as my all outs with, and like I beat them by like a whole like mile and a half. But like I'm wrecked today. I literally, Erin had to go to the bank afterwards to drop off something. I fell asleep in the car while she was out in the bank, and I took a nap. So it's been a day.
Output is high.
Output is definitely high right now. Yes, which is why I'm thinking for Airsoft days we need to put my calories up like 500 or something like that.
I don't think I've ever had to put that in the tracker. So it says training day and non-training day. Now I need a third column for like if you do Airsoft
day. Well, if you look at it, I mean, if you're continuously doing, I'm quick sprints, fast rush, fast paced, for six hours. I mean, I'm probably burning like 3,000-4,000 calories easy, doing something like that. So, I mean, it makes sense why I'm losing like 2 or 3 pounds a week now. So, I mean, hey, for cutting phase, this is going to be great. This is going to be awesome. So I'm just going to Airsoft 3 times a week, and I'll be down to like 220 in like a week and a half.
Hashtag fat loss advice, right? Good. Perfect.
Want to drop weight, go to Airsoft. There you go. That's
the
new,
3 times.
Think about this. We can create a whole new chain of just Airsoft cardio. So you literally have to run or you get shot in your ass.
What we could do is we could have a similar sort of setup as Orange Theory. So you do Airsoft, but then you have a gym section as well. So it's like on and off.
But here's the thing: if you stop doing your reps, you get shot with an airsoft gun. So it just pushes you even harder. It's like pop, like.
So when you say 5 more, you're doing them, or you're getting shot.
Well, and not to show my body again, but check this out. I got wrecked. Look at this.
Top off again straight away. We're only 6 minutes in. Nice, good.
Yeah. Shirt came off again. So I got wrecked.
I kept my shirt on the entire time. Thankfully.
Yeah.
Don't have anything to show.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Since Monday, I don't really have much of an update. I closed a lot of loops yesterday. I will say this, and you'll understand the frustration of this. I like to do things, get stuff done, close the loop on things. And I feel like there are a lot of open loops because there are a lot of projects going on. And I was frustrated yesterday morning. I was like, I need to just get this shit done. So I literally just over caffeinated, consumed more nicotine than I would like to admit. But I got a lot of shit done, and there's been progress on a lot of things. It was good. And then I had this realization, and maybe you'll understand this too. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm doing enough. And then Dill sent me something, and I literally sat on the bench right here. I have my we have gym bench here because I don't have a gym yet, the one that you have, but mine's right here beside me. I sat on it and just watched it and laughed, and I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, so I get it. But yeah, no, things are good. One step closer to the gym. Hopefully, I'm just waiting on an email back through the completion. To
me the invoices and the things you keep adding. I'm like, this is gonna be the best gym ever created.
It will.
Here's the thing, I'm actually not jealous because I have an amazing gym myself, but obviously it's a little bit of a competition. So as soon as the kids, I'm just letting you know, as soon as the kids hit 18, and that other part of my garage is open, I will have the most massive gym that humans.
It's not a competition, but it's a competition.
In fact, I have enough room in there because it's 2-story. I can build a second story so that I have 1, 2, 3 sections of the gym. I'm just thinking about space optimization here. Okay, so think about it. I can have like 4 different leg presses just in case. What if they have 4 people over and they all want to do leg press at the same time?
Yeah, right? Well, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
no other way. It has to be done.
I'm excited for your gym, though, man.
Me too. I actually was at the point yesterday. Truthfully, I was like, I emailed the guy and I was like, look, I'm not waiting on this any longer. If it's not in tomorrow, I'm just going to pull my offer. And I was like, what am I going to do with all of the equipment that I've ordered? Number one,
I'm basically bluffing you. There's no chance.
No, there's absolutely no chance at all. Yeah. I was like, big boy talk. I'm like, right, I'm pulling out of the offer, and then they sorted it today, so it worked. So thankfully, I don't actually have to pull it out because I was like, I would have like 11 pieces of equipment in my office here, completely useless. But no, things are good. Like I said, just lots of spinning plates, and it was good to sort of just catch up on stuff. Yeah, things are good.
That's awesome. Well, I before we get into our actual topic, I wanted to do another update on the fish oils because there's been some good information that's come out. And
this is in the past 2 days.
Yes, actually, yes. So there was Dr. Brad Stanfield came out with a new blog post, video post, and as well as Physionic. I can't remember the doctor's name. He runs the Physionic channel. He's awesome. Both doctors that I read all the time, they break down all of the science, the studies. They're super smart. And Dr. Brad is really amazing on like supplementation, nutrition. He's got his own supplement brands and things like that. But Physionic goes down to like the nitty gritty details and all the data. And so they did 2 posts as of yesterday, and they were really great. So here's the interesting part about the studies, and here's what I'd recommend for folks based on everything that I've analyzed. So first and foremost, there was a statistically significant increase in atrial fibrillation, a much less statistically significant increase in stroke. However, the studies were very unique as far as the sample size. It was like 400,000 people, right? And out of that, they didn't have the ability to continuously ask people whether or not they were still taking the fish supplements, the fish oils. So we don't know if that statistically significant is because of the pool size or just specifically because of fish oil or anything else that they were doing. So, but here's the crazy stat that you should be aware of is that in all those 400,000 plus people that were hypothetically taking fish oil, there was a statistically significant reduction in all-cause morbidity, including death. Right. All-cause morbidity is, death being the large reduction, especially when it comes to cardiovascular risk. So your risk of cardiovascular events significantly decreases, which is what we've known for years by using fish oil. Right. There's a statistically significant issue with stroke and AFib, but very minor and probably not that big of a deal when it comes to the overall pool and what they're doing from the sample size. And there's 2 studies that were done on fish oils, and there was a double-blind placebo randomized control study, and they did find that taking fish oil under the 1,000 milligram mark, so 840 milligrams was what was used in this specific study, had no increase whatsoever in atrial fibrillation or stroke. So the recommendation is to take roughly around 850 to 1,000 milligrams of fish oil a day. If you want to stay statistically accurate to the study that had the cardiovascular improvements, as well as no direct increase in stroke or AFib, 840 milligrams, split between EPA and DHA. Typically, you want to have a little bit higher of an EPA for brain, a little bit lower of DHA. Seems to be the sweet spot for no increased risk of AFib or stroke, or and also getting all the benefits of the cardiovascular health, brain development, everything else that goes along with it. So one, source your fish oils where you think you should get them from, from quality products. And two, keep it around the 850 milligrams. More does not mean better, specifically with this. And again, we don't know enough about it. So maybe 2,000 is good. We don't know. But based on the studies that we have, 840 to 850 milligrams is where 840 was specifically for the trial. That's what we know is having a statistically significant decrease in death and no change in AFib or stroke. So that was kind of cool that they broke that down. There's a lot of confusion with all the headlines, and it hits so hard for me because I've always been like, fish oil. Now I don't got to tell people like, hey, you're going to die of, AFib or stroke,
This thing that I've been telling you for the past 3 years, psych.
Yeah. So the matter is, if you're dosing fish oil properly, no risk whatsoever, has all the benefits of heart, and cardiovascular stuff. So keep taking your fish oils, and make sure it's just done from a quality source. So yeah.
Cool. I want to follow up before we get into the topic, and I think I'll lead in. Obviously, last episode we talked about being in surplus and being in maintenance, and one of the things that I mentioned was there was a YouTube video published on Renaissance periodization. So Dr. Mike's site with Eric Helms. Basically, Eric Helms and his team ran a study essentially to see what the optimal surplus was. And I'm not going to go into the details. I'll link the video below. I'm just going to sort of go through some of my findings. Essentially, they ran an 8-week study with people who lifted. It was randomized. So it was like professional bodybuilders or trained athletes or just people who train like you and I. They split them into 3 groups. The idea was one group would eat at maintenance, one group would eat at an intended 5% surplus, and one group would eat at an intended 15% surplus. The thing that they found, they come in, they trained in the lab. The only person that knew who was at maintenance and who was in the 2 surpluses was the dietitian. So the trainers didn't know who was in each group, and they trained 3 times a week. And over the 8-week period, they found out that there was no significant benefit to increase in strength or muscle mass for having a higher surplus. The only effect that you got really was additional body fat. And I think that sort of break it down as to sort of where you should be finding, like this is something that you and I have essentially been playing about with for the past 2 or 3 years of like high surplus versus a moderate surplus. They say that you want to try and aim for a lower surplus and do it over an extended period of time. They said anywhere between 250 to 400 calories of a surplus. So obviously there's a lot of things to take into consideration. That is finding maintenance. You're obviously finding out that you're potentially not in a surplus because your output has increased. So all of those things that need to be taken into consideration. And doing it over an extended period of time. And my thought on that is every pound that you put on, whatever the ratio is of muscle mass to body fat, the body fat's going to have to come off. So remember that whenever you get like, it's not just an excuse to put on excess amount of body fat because it's going to have to come off at some point. And there is statistically no advantage to eating in a higher surplus just for the sake of putting on weight. The one thing that they did say
to add just that specific point. So, and as you go up in weight, you may not still be in that same range. That variable, that number changes as you have more body fat, as you have lower body fat, right? Lower body fat, you're going to have lower body fat percentage or lower, size and nature of the poundage. The less your body has to move around, thus your calories will be lower. If you're higher, obviously, the more you have to move around, those may change and shift to be higher, right? So
yeah. So if I set my calories at a 400 calorie surplus today, in 6 months, that 400 calorie surplus is going to need to be different, like because the amount of calories for me at maintenance level is going to be increased. So they say basically set that at the start, and then sort of to auto-regulate it, use your weight gain over time. So they said look at it on a 2-week average, which I thought was interesting instead of a 1-week average that we do. Look at it a 2-week average, and they basically said for advanced lifters, you want to be putting on around about 1% of your total body weight per month. And then they said basically 1.5 for intermediate, and then up to 2% of your total body weight per month if you're a novice lifter. And the way to sort of define that would be a novice lifter or a beginner would be training seriously and consistently and at a high level, anywhere between 0 and 2 years, then 2 to 4 for intermediate, and then 4+ years for advanced. So basically, the longer you train, the harder you train, the more difficult it becomes to add muscle, which is a fucking shit show if you ask me.
Yeah, I know. Our bodies, come on. What are you doing?
Come on, you guys. But essentially, they talk about it as well. Like they talk about essentially giving yourself one shot to quote unquote dirty bulk and essentially just get fat. Like you can do it that one time, but there's a lot of detrimental effects that come after that if you do that time and time again, and the negative impacts that has on your ability to maintain muscle mass and your ability to actually strip off body fat. So for me, my thought process is if I go from where I'm at now and I want to move into a surplus, it's going to be a very slight surplus and it's going to be for a super extended period of time. And I think for me, again, I mentioned this last episode, like if I'm able to maintain my body composition for now for an entire year, but gain 8 to 10 pounds, I'm in a pretty good position because you can tell that that's going to be majority muscle mass. And if I want to do a cut, it'll be relatively easy on the other side because there'll not be as much unwanted body fat if I just went with an additional 1,000 calories or whatever it is.
So did and you I think you already said this, but when they were in a caloric deficit within 200 to 400 calories as far as range, were they still able to gain muscle mass, but maybe not as much as the surplus? Do you know that?
No, there was no deficit. It was maintenance, a 5% surplus and a 15% surplus. So it was specifically around muscle mass in a surplus.
I would be curious to see what those ratios look like on, ability to maintain muscle mass, at least maintain or gain muscle mass in a deficit. What does that look like? Especially if you're, padding with, protein. We know it's possible, but what's the deviation or difference between,
actually,
maintenance and surplus?
One thing that Eric said, he said that there is a lot of data to back that being in a 500 calorie deficit is detrimental to hypertrophy, which I find interesting. So it's like, if you think, okay, so say for example, I go in a surplus for 6 months and I put on 25 pounds, how many weeks or months am I going to have to be in a deficit, like quite a significant deficit of 500 calories? And what impact is that going to have on my muscle mass? So, okay, maybe I put on 25 pounds and maybe 10 pounds of that is muscle. But on the other side of that, for me to get lean again, how much of that do I have to actually lose to actually get lean again? So I thought that was the interesting part about it.
Well, and I think that goes into, obviously it's gone into everything that we talk about here in Preach, which is, slight deviations up or down, right? Slight deviations, above maintenance or below maintenance, or maintenance, to contain. I think we know, obviously, if you're padding with enough protein on maintenance, it's very, doable to maintain a little bit of a lean, structure, not gain as much body fat or if any body fat, and continue to put on muscle mass through as you're doing it. Whereas deficit, that becomes much harder. You lose strength, you lose those types of things while you're trying to shave those off. For me, I've definitely noticed with my increased cardio intake with Airsoft, I'm definitely leaner, but my strength is still increasing drastically. I was able to hit, that 500 pound deadlift for 4, I'll probably be on 5 or 6, in the next couple, next month or so. So, it's definitely, I'm definitely seeing the increase in that based off of how I train. Thus, my muscle mass has to be going off. And I think that leads us really good into today's discussion.
Well, because this will actually lead us.
That was such a good padding to get into the discussion.
Yes, and it will, but I think that this is valid because it ties it all together. So I'm going to use myself as a bit of an experiment in 2 ways here. Number one, I know I said last week I have no desire to move into a surplus or change body weight or whatever, but for the event in Belfast, we're heavily focused on strength and big lifts. So we've got about 15 weeks until that point. I'm going to move into a slight surplus and I'll test out the theory of 250 to 400 additional calories above maintenance and what my body composition, how I maintain that over the 15-week period. Additionally, hot off the press, there's a new coach in town that's going to be doing the programming. He's going to write my program specifically to increase my squat, my deadlift, and my bench for what we'll be doing in Belfast, and also focus on hypertrophy. And I said, look, as long as I can have at least one like upper body pump session a week, then we're golden. So it'll be interesting for me to test that out in terms of it's a totally new style of training for me and also managing a slight surplus along the way. So I'll document that over the next 15 weeks or so, which leads us into today's topic of
how do you know if you're progressing or not? And I think that's some of the, we've talked about this topic quite a bit because it is an important topic. Are you putting in, and I like when you talked about the folks that do like the dirty bulks, right? They just eat whatever they want to in huge amounts of surpluses, the impact that it has on your overall health, right? I mean, your cholesterol levels go out of whack. The amount of strain that it puts on your body by carrying all that mass, like it's not healthy to just eat whatever you want to in a surplus as you're going through. You still need to stick to some sort of guidelines of obviously hitting protein first. And I say this as I'm eating, Starburst, minis and gushers for my pre-workout, but it's all in a controlled fashion where the majority of food that I'm eating, is still 80% whole foods, 20% whatever I want. but I'm not, trying to put on muscle mass just to put on mass, right? And we've done a pretty intense bulk before, where I did put on, a good byproduct of fat, and I was good to shave off. But this, and just trying different things that work, right? What works best for you, your body type, and everything else. When I first started lifting, the biggest fear that I had in myself was, am I progressing? And am I doing all the possible things to maximize that progress as I go along? My biggest fear is I go to the gym next year and, I look exactly the same as I did the year before, or maybe even gone down, in size or structure or what I may be able to do. Right. So, and that's why it was really hard when I hit that 600-pound deadlift, when I started losing a lot of that strength, because I stopped training that way. It was a mental screw for me. I'm like, am I, decreasing everything that I'm doing? Truth matters. No, I'm just not training that way. And I can tell you that, this last training program, my arms have like almost doubled in size, it feels like. So things are working, definitely as they're anticipated. But the biggest thing that is for me is like, what are the clear things that we can do? Because building muscle is extremely slow. Our bodies, are not designed to just build, 10 pounds of muscle a week. It takes long periods of time to get the physique that you want to. And, you mentioned on Monday's podcast, you still recommend, people as they're first going through this to be able to shave the body fat off, right? To see what's there. And I think that's really important. I think to prove that you can lose the weight and to have the comfort level there, if I had full confidence in myself, I would focus more on building muscle first, then shaving the weight. But that's a really big leap of faith for somebody that has struggled with weight their whole life, right? They want to see the results, immediately. But as you start to do that, you're going to notice that your physique, while you're losing the weight, your physique is not what you want it to be. You're still going to have, the belly. You're still going to have kind of a non-muscular build because you haven't focused on lifting muscle, right? And even if you're weight training, again, it's such a slow process that, when you shed that weight, yes, you might have a little tiny bit of muscle, but it's not going to be, 5 years worth of building muscle or 10 years of building muscle, right? This is a process that you have to kind of rinse and repeat on, as you're going through. So, one, I think the mindset and everything else and consistency and everything else we talk about is first and foremost to getting the results that you want to, but the period of that time is slow, right? So, for me, it's been almost like 4 years, like 3.5, 4 years to get to where I'm currently at today in my physique. And my hope is in another 4 years, right? I'm double the size of what I am today, right? Or quadruple.
Literally
like
500 pounds.
Times 10. That dude that Instagram you sent me yesterday, dude,
yeah.
pull up with 350 pounds.
Yeah, he's a big dude. There's some people here just freaks of nature, like insane.
Freak of nature, man. Oh my god, insane. But and you can see the whole thing is bending, like as he's going and doing
not that machine is not built for him. He was doing hammer curls with, I think it was 176-pound dumbbell that he had to like strap weights onto or something. Absolutely insane.
So in 4 years, I'm hoping to be right where that guy's at. But no, but in all seriousness, what are the things that you can look at for consistency? Because I think that's where we get a lot of questions, in the Hacking Your Health community is like, am I making the right type of progress? And you had mentioned, some of the folks that weren't hitting their calorie goals, right? Mm-hmm. So then you're going to extend their, their cutting phase because mm-hmm. they're not hitting their calorie goals, right? And so there's certain things you have to be accountable for to get the desired results. So if you have a trainer like Ben that's coming in and giving you specific calories, well, you need to hit those calories, right? There's certain thresholds you have to do to get to that, right? You can't just be like, hey, I'm going to build muscle and I'm not going to do anything else. I'm not going to eat protein. I'm just going to do straight fat and carbs. And then I'm expecting to gain muscle. That's not going to work, right? But you also have to be able to hit those consistent things that will get you to that. But then there's other things that we can look at, both short, mid, and long term, that allow us to say, okay, we are progressing forward. And that could be through weight, that can be through, composition changes, that can be through volume, how strong we are. There's a lot of different measures that we can look at. And today's podcast is really just to dive down into the things that we can use and that you use in your check-ins and, that we look at from a training perspective. If I go back to, week 1 of where I was at, right, to right now, the change is insurmountable. It's huge, right? It's such a big, but that's 3.5 years of being relatively consistent with everything that we're doing, right? To get to that. But in those periods of time, believe me, I've had, so many thoughts of like, am I doing this right? Is this even working? Like, especially early on, like when I'm doing, deadlifts, I'm like, am I even doing this deadlifts right? Like, and then the form feedback was great and everything else, but like, am I doing enough sets? Am I doing enough reps? What do I need to do? Like, am I, what does failure feel like? What does, this specific muscle group feel like? I still struggle with certain muscle groups, like, especially like certain parts of my back. I'm like, am I even working this part of my back out? I have no idea. So it's those types of things that we can look at to start to build across our training programs to give us at least some of that feedback that we need, that we're actually progressing, so we don't quit.
Yes. So your question is how do we make sure that we're progressing? I think the first question that you have to ask yourself is what is the goal, because it's going to be different in terms of that. So essentially, if we talk,
not everybody wants to be that 390 pound 6 foot 8 guy.
Apparently not. It's just weird. Strange. I don't know.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. I don't get it. So I'll first frame it based on our conversation from last week about being in a surplus and being in a deficit. For me, the hardest thing to overcome mentally, and this is me personally that I've sort of, I guess, helped people through time and time again. Whenever you're in a deficit, your ability to see progress at a fast rate is quite high, because your metrics will be coming down in terms of your weight will be coming down, or your measurements will be coming down, or you will see changes in the mirror, and you can see that quite rapidly. You finally get to the point where you're happy with your physique, you're lean, you can see visible abs, whatever the goal is. And then we shift into a maintenance period, and then we shift into a surplus. And this is where the sort of mental hurdle can come in, because you've been so focused on the metrics shifting at such a rapid rate that now we're shifting the other direction. And as we said, building muscle is a much more difficult process and a much longer process. And the numbers don't change anywhere near as quickly as they do whenever you're in a deficit. So at that point, you have to focus on more performance markers, and actually not that we're not before, but I put more of an emphasis on performance markers, i.e. are your gym sessions improving? Is the intensity up? Is the weight, is the reps up, or whatever it is? So first of all, establishing those two in terms of the direction. I guess to sort of put an umbrella over all this, exactly what you said, like, are you actually doing all of the stuff that's prescribed? So like, are you eating within your calories? Are you eating up to your calories? Are you eating your protein? Are you ticking all the boxes? Because as you said, if it's not, if you're like, right, I want to build muscle, but I'm only going to eat 1,800 calories a day, it's probably not going to happen. Like, you need to make sure you're ticking all the boxes. For me, if we talk about being in a surplus, because that's what's in my head, things that I will look at in terms of making sure you're progressing. And I think we can both agree that the check-in sheet that I have is quite extensive. So it's not just weight. So we'll have weight. We have metrics in terms of measurement. So it's biceps, quads, waist, hips, shoulders, calves, ironically. And we want to make sure that they're progressing in the way that we want them to. We also look at heart rate variability, rest of heart rate. We look at sleep. We look at obviously cardio markers, and have blood glucose in there for the clients that want to use that as well. So there's a lot of things to look at in a lot of ways that we can progress. Whenever it comes to being in a surplus, as I said, obviously the focus is on performance in the gym and making sure you're getting stronger or your sessions are improving. We did a podcast episode 3 or 4 episodes ago about ways you can progress beyond weight. So it's not necessarily always just weight in the bar or reps. But I think the biggest thing that I see people not struggle with, but the biggest thing that they overlook is actually just having a fucking record of the stuff that they do in the gym. Because I've seen it time and time again, and probably quite early on in my coaching career, people are like, no, I know what I did last week. And I'm like, that is fucking bullshit. There's no way that you can know every single exercise you did, how many reps you did, and what weight you did for every single session you did across the week. So actually having a training log to have the information to go, okay, right, today's Wednesday session last week, what did I do? How many reps did I do on leg press, and what weight did I do? Have I progressed in this week?
So question for you on this one, because this is, I stopped logging my weight of what I was actually, minus PRs, like, of course, but what I've found, and this is what I found from when I was tracking, is that I have a good feeling of what my weight was from the prior week, but also most importantly, what failure looked like. And to me, like, if I'm failing in either way, whether it's increasing in weight or the amount of reps I'm able to do, I'm still going to be going above and beyond what I did the previous week, because I know how to push myself past that limit, right? So, for me, like, let's just say I'm doing like a lat pull down. Well, I'm not going to stop doing that pull down until I can't do another one where I'm rocking my body trying to get those last few those few reps in, I've found that to be fairly consistent with not having to log, but it's taken me a long time to get to that point to where I know what my body does to be able to log it. Now, it's probably more beneficial for me to log.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Right. And if you think I still should log, I absolutely will.
I do.
Okay. Well,
I think because it's if you think about this, what you just said today, and I know that you said that it hasn't impacted your lifting sessions, but if you think about how you felt this morning whenever you're in Orange Theory because of the Airsoft that you did yesterday, so the feeling of failure might be different day on day depending on how you slept, how hydrated you are, how much food you've eaten. So yes, it may still feel like failure, but it may not be more in terms of sets or reps that you have done the week before. Like I can't express, a hands up, like there have been times that I have not tracked my workouts and I just go in based on how I feel, absolutely. But in terms of like maximizing progress, and if we're talking about complete optimization of your sessions, I like to go in and go, okay, you talk about lat pull down, like, okay, last week I got 12 reps at 150 pounds or whatever it is. I know that that's the number that I need to beat. Like that's the thing that I focus on. And I actually, probably not so much recently, and I'll try and get back into it with this new training block, but I used to find it quite like therapeutic almost, like, or methodical, writing out my training block before I went into the gym. So I used to write it on pen and paper, like in the Neanderthal, and go in and go, okay, right, I literally have just written out the entire training block. I look back at the page before and I use the last page to sort of see where I'm at, and I go, okay, right, these are the areas that I need to progress in terms of this week. So yes, it may feel like you're progressing, but there are so many factors to take into consideration that you may not actually be progressing at the rate that you think you are. So I'll put it to you and I'll say there may be gains that you're leaving on the table.
Well, I mean, when you put it that way, I have to change it. But, it'd be very easy for me to put, each exercise just on my whiteboard and then put what I did, as far as the sets are concerned for whatever I'm doing. So it's easy to do. It's just, I kind of felt like I had progressed to where I can, I know my exertion levels. I know what I'm doing as far as, the weights. And I do remember hey, it was on a 12 on the weight stack last time. I'm going to try 13, and see how that feels. And I may go down too, but I'm always trying to push, as hard as I can until I can't do any more, even starting off with that very first rep. Right.
But I think it becomes more valuable on the weeks that you can't, because I guess my next point on that in terms of progress is obviously we can't progress forever, unfortunately. So there will be weeks, and I always use like a 3-week time block. So say, for example, that pull down, if you don't progress in that lift for 3 weeks in a row, it's time to swap that exercise out. So it's probably even more valuable in that, unknown the things that you're not progressing on, so you can swap it out for a similar but different exercise. And I will say, like, if you think about all the big boys that we've seen in all the big gyms that we've been at, like, sure as shit that they're there with their pen and paper writing absolutely everything down because they're making sure that they get all the gains that are on the table.
Yeah, and there's actually I wanted to bring up Jeff Nipper did a comparison to kind of like the Sam Sulek model versus, the build-up model. So Sam Sulek, and even like Chris Bumstead, things like that, right? They go all out as fast as they can, even on their first set. After warm-ups, they're pushing themselves to where they don't have any reserves in the tank, right? Whereas you see traditional lifters that will kind of build up to that, right? So you build up, let's just say you do a set of 12, it's probably not going to be a failure set, right? You still have more, maybe it's like an RPE of like 5 or 6. And then you get into, your second set, your third set, and then you start to fail in your third and fourth set, and you kind of go out from there, right? What the data says on that is that there really isn't a huge difference in how you lift those two ways specifically in building muscle. They pretty much have the same type of result, because if you think about how you're breaking it down, you're going to be going down in weight, as you start to increase versus going up in weight. The volume tends to be roughly around the same type of thing. So, regardless of how you lift, if you kind of build up, let's just say you're doing 4 sets, the first set you kind of, do it's tough, but you only do like 12, right? Mm-hmm. And then the next one you do like 12 again. And then the third one you do maybe like 8. And then you kind of, you max out, you burn your muscles on the fourth one, and you're maybe only doing like 5 or 6. It's going to have the same effect if you flip that model and you go as heavy as you possibly can. Maybe you only get 10 of those, right? You drop the weight, maybe you're able to, sneak out another 10. It's going to be the same type of differential as you go through. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, but I think, again, to that point, it depends on what you're training for. So if we go back to are you training for just overall muscle size, or are you training for strength? Because the conversation that we had before was about going in and attacking your heaviest like compound lift first, because that's whenever you have the most energy and that's when you're freshest. That's obviously good. I would imagine that would be more focused on people who are more interested in gaining strength. Whereas if you do it, you go in and you do like the sort of more isolation movements first for hypertrophy, and then you go in and you do the compound movements after. The benefit of that is your muscles are already going to be fatigued, and you're not putting as much sort of strain and stress on your body and setting yourself up for as much injury, because you're not having to lift as much weight in the more complex movements, so that you like it's better from an injury management perspective because you're already fatigued. So if your goal is strength, do one, and if your goal is solely hypertrophy, then you would do the other. But obviously with you and I, the goal is both. So
I like how you say hypertrophy. It's, for us in the US, it's hypertrophy, but either way, it's fine.
Sorry, I do correct myself quite often. Actually, I've noticed this myself. There are words that I'll correct when I'm talking to Americans, and there are words that I will correct when I'm talking to like Matt. I'm going to end up with this real fucking weird accent or weird way to say specific words, because I'm like auto-correcting to American and auto-correcting to like Scottish or proper English.
Oh, it's funny. You know who Benedict Cumberbatch is?
Yeah.
The actor. He got completely destroyed online because of how he pronounced penguins. It was like pen guns or something like that. It was something like off the wall. And he did a documentary on penguins, and it was like 700 times of him saying penguins wrong. So he actually won't ever say penguins ever again to anybody publicly, because he was on a comedy show and they played all the ones he's like, pen guns are, like over and over and over again. It was like a really horrible pronunciation of it. So it's just funny, the differences in language. But no, I fully agree. Like, when you're looking at tracking progress, we had initially talked about kind of the consistencies, but weight tracking for me, the amount of volume and weight that you're putting onto your into your workouts is a clear indication of whether or not you're putting on muscle mass. Like, that is probably the single point of proof that you have that you're getting stronger, right? And that you're adding muscle. If you're not getting stronger, either A, you're not eating enough food, right? Or B, you're not training hard enough to put your body under duress to build new muscle. So there are things we can tweak to get, additional strength as you start to progress with this, but you're not, your body is not actually able to increase in weight and volume if you're not adding muscle mass. It just doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Your muscle tomorrow is not gonna be like, hey, now I can lift 600 pounds. You have to build up to that, and the muscle has to be under enough strain and rebuild itself stronger, and to continue to add on to that to be able to handle the type of either volume or the amount of weight that you're actually pushing through. So I would say single-handedly, the amount of weight that you're pushing through, the amount of volume that you're pushing through, is probably the single best factor that you can see of whether or not you're making progress.
I agree.
And remember, even if we're in a surplus or deficit, if we're continuing to add strength, that's muscle mass that eventually, when we shave, your body down, you're going to have better definition as you're going through and doing this, right?
Yeah, and I would say I'm a big advocate of making sure that you're actually contracting the muscle properly, because you will have the ability to move more weight. And I always say you want to get strong through the muscle, not just through the movement, because there's a certain elasticity in your body. You can use momentum quite a lot. This is why I focus quite heavily on tempo. So actually making sure you're getting strong in the muscle and the contraction versus just the movement. So yes, okay, we want to make sure that we're adding more weight or more reps, but not at the detriment to actually the ability to contract the muscle, because that's where you'll actually see the growth happening, not just the using the momentum of it.
And to maximize growth, we know from the data studies that a muscle that's in a stretched position has the biggest increase in volume, size, and strength. So it's impacting the muscle.
I'm going to send you this
in a much different way. Yeah.
I actually, just before we came on the podcast, I got down a rabbit hole of Dr. Mike stuff. And they talked about new mega growth exercise for stubborn biceps. And it is the fully stretched position. So essentially what they talk about is, if you imagine doing a bicep curl standing up like this, there's no, yes, okay, your biceps are fully extended, but there's no tension because of the gravity. So he's literally lying on a bench, fully stretched at the bottom. So I'm going to try that out because I have stubborn biceps, and I've just sent it to you. So please send me a video.
When I do bicep curls now, I do that. I have it on an inclined position to where my arms are behind me.
Yeah.
And you have to go much lighter, obviously, in weight.
That's why I like the cables, because it gives you that sort of that feeling of the stretch behind.
Cable is absolutely great for that type of rotation as well. I'll do that in the tonal. But when you're coming from back here, and your movement is not very far either. I mean, it's just basically, coming from here to here, right? As you're coming through and pulling that muscle from a stress position. But same thing for like, I found doing lat pull downs, especially from a cable machine, I can really yank those lats and then start to pull down from a stress position to get the full range of motion as I'm coming through and doing it. So when you're getting better with your form and technique, you want your muscles to be in as much of a stress position as possible. Same thing for like, reverse flies, coming forward as much as you can and getting even a little bit more stretch as you're coming through. So Nippert had recommended on the reverse flies that, the pec decks that you're traditionally used to, you can usually reverse those and you kind of start here and, you move back, right? You can actually twist your body a bit more and just do one hand at a time. And you're stretching those rear delts in a position that again is maximum performance and efficiency. So as you're coming through, you're doing a bigger range of motion, and that stretch is there, and keeping that time under tension under those muscles as you're going through. So, finding what workouts allow you to do that is very, very beneficial to muscle growth and increasing the gains that you're getting as you're coming through. So, as we talk about progress, how do we maximize progress, as much as we possibly can, as efficiently as we can, and as quick as we can, as we're going through and doing this as well. And that's why you hear, like when we're talking about, hey, once you get your mindset hit, once you got, all this, hey, maybe adding something like creatine or fish oils or whatever, that's going to give you like a 0.1% maybe, but hey, they're efficiently helping you as you go along, whether that's consistent energy levels, adding dextrose to the end to allow, glucose to be spiking to allow, to replace your glycogen stores, in your muscles. Like these are little tweaks that we can make along the way to maximize kind of performance as we're starting to get better with what we're doing. So, but again, tracking progress, stress position typically will give you bigger progress, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's working through the full range, and whether you find if you're trying to be efficient with your time, finding an exercise that allows you to work through the full range, or understanding that there's some exercises that will work through the stretch to the mid range and then the mid to the short range in a different exercise. Again, to Jeff Nippert, I saw a video on him earlier today, I think, on lateral raises. Sounds like me and you just watch Jeff Nippert and Dr. Mike videos all day, and that's all we do. You go to Airsoft and I just sit here watching the videos. And so they talk about like the normal lateral raise, and you imagine dumbbells down by your height. There's no tension in the muscle because gravity just pulls it down, and you only really get the tension from like 20 degrees up to here. And the conversation was around, is it better to lean away from it and do it from here, or lean in to the opposite side and do it from here? And he found it was better to lean in because there's tension the whole way through on the way up. So something I'm going to trial out as well. And this is the fun thing about it. It's like I've been training for 10 years and I'm like, that maybe would actually be more beneficial.
Yep, for sure. So we talked about the weight increases. Also, what about visuals, pictures, things like that? I mean, the thing with pictures that I think if you're doing it yourself, you will nitpick every little thing in your body and you will not see the progress that others see. So I think it's also important to have at least a friend or a peer, someone that you're comfortable sharing, underwear pictures with, I guess, your spouse, significant other, or obviously Ben as a trainer, to go through and take a look at those pictures, because, we can see things drastically changing in your body. You may not. And I'll just be fully transparent. Like, I'm still not happy where my body's at, right? Like I still see the imperfections of my body. Hey, I have a scar line here, or, I have excess skin from when I was really big, or, you see all those imperfections, even though you've made some substantial progress. You're going to want somebody that's either, hey, I can now start to see, this little line going through your shoulder where you're starting to get some definition in your delts, or, hey, your biceps actually looking bigger, or hey, there's a brand new vein that just popped out, right? Those are the types of things I think having a different perspective can help you on.
Yeah, I think people don't like taking their progress photos, and it's always like whenever I have that initial call with someone, like, I really didn't like taking those photos. I'm like, well, number one, that's why we're on this call in the first place. So yeah, fair enough. But even from a progress picture perspective, like the way you take them is the most unflattering way. You're just stood there. Like there's no flex. Like you're just literally just standing there. Nobody likes what their progress photos look like. But I think having them is absolutely invaluable in terms of like your journey. And for me, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of progress pictures for me over the past 10 years. And it's funny to just look back and think how I felt at the time specifically. So even if we think back to, you said about whenever you get lean first, I remember within the first 6 weeks of me training brand new, I went from skinny fat to just being skinny, but I could see muscle definition, I could see abs, and I could see like shoulders. And I thought I was massive. I probably weighed like 150 pounds, but I was lean. I was like, I'm fucking jacked. But to be able to see that and go back and then see sort of every version of me through now, and I think I actually find that I'm more critical the more that I get into it, because I feel like because I have put so much time and effort into it, I should get more from it. But again, if I share them with you, or you commented on the picture that I shared on Twitter a week or so back, like you get more positive feedback from other people, because again, you'll always be the most critical of yourself. But yes, having them is absolutely invaluable, and know that not everybody, in fact, 100% of people don't actually like looking at the progress photos.
Yeah, and the progress photos for me are always tough, because like, you know, for me, like you have to be consistent of when you take it. So you're taking in the morning, the afternoon, the evening, you know, on a Wednesday versus like a Monday or Tuesday, you know, coming off of the weekend. You know, these are all things that, you know, you need to kind of put in consideration. I know for me, you know, I try to stay there and I'm like, all right, let me try to flare my lats out.
Like if I breathe in, if I breathe in a bit like this and I do this, and you're like in this real fucked up position. But I think the thing about it is, what I see is, if I'm looking at myself in the mirror, right? If I look at myself in the mirror and I'm taking a photo with my phone, I can manipulate my body a little bit to like show a little bit more muscle, or flex a little bit, or manipulate the light or something.
Yeah.
So what I see through my phone, or what I see in the mirror, is entirely different than if I just set the phone in front of me and step back and take the photo. It's like literally, you could do it before and after of those two things, of like 10 seconds difference, and be like, here's me 10 seconds apart, and they'll be entirely different.
100%. And it's so funny because what I see in the mirror is completely different than what I see when I take those damn pictures. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be the best check-in photo I've ever had in my entire life. Look at this. Look at those things. And you get there like, oh my God, what happened? Who is that? Who's that on my photo? You know?
Yeah, but having them is important, and understand that like they are unflattering. But if you are consistent of when you take them for as much as you can be, then they're a lot easier to compare. Do you know what I mean? Like I've had, you know, clients before where they'll take them in the morning. They're like, oh, but these photos just look the same. Like, well, you took it at fucking 8 p.m. at night after you'd eaten all of your food. Like, of course you're gonna look different. So it's about managing those things as much as possible.
Yep. What other things that we can we look at to track progress? I think, you know, for me, you know, you look at the weight tracking and everything else. You can also obviously use the scale for tracking progress as well, right? And you know, people always get hung up on, well, I didn't lose enough weight this week or next week, and there's a lot of variables that go into that. I think, you know, you have to take a look at the big picture, which couples that with measurements, right? So if you couple measurements with weight, you will have a much better perspective on, is your body actually recomping or not? And are you going down the right progress? So for Ben, you know, when I check in with Ben, I'm doing my waist, I'm doing my hips, I'm doing my legs, most specifically calves and around the quad area. I'm doing my arm here around the bicep, and then I'm doing my neck. And then did I miss anything?
Nope.
I think that's it. And that will give you an understanding of, from a baseline, if you track that, you know, week after week, and you can buy, you know, these cheap, you know, little measurement things that measure the amount of measures. Yep. And I have an electrical one that's really nice. It just does it for me automatically. And when you get those readings, if your waist is slimming down, your hips are slimming down, and your quads are growing, I wouldn't put much money on calves. So don't rely on calves.
I have solved that problem. When you see me in a couple of weeks, my calves are going to be massive.
Can't wait to see it.
Mobile as fuck, and my calves are going to be massive.
I hope your recovery from calf surgery goes well. But
not be a podcast for about 6 weeks, because I'll be in Turkey getting calf implants.
Yeah, but you know, the measurements of your biceps, obviously, and then if your waist is going down, you know, you're starting to see some progress as you go on. Even though you may not see it in the pictures, you can definitely measure those as you go along. I would rely less off of like those in-body scanners or those impedance scans, things like that. They become highly inaccurate, and you need to be very consistent again with when you do it. So, you know, don't have anything in your stomach first thing in the morning on a specific day, specific time. Those can help you at least start to, you know, what I do like impedance scanners for is not the accuracy around body fat percentage. You know, you can do a caliper for that, or you can do a DEXA scan, which, you know, is probably one of the more accurate ones. Would cost obviously a lot of money to go to a DEXA place and get a scan. For me, I like those like in bodies, for example, and they have the same ones for like just normal tracking a body fat percentage is just like, through impedance on your weight scales. There's like newer ones that are smart and things like that and can track. I think Withlings has one that's decent. Again, focus less on the body fat percentage, but look at the deviation of, because it looks for muscle mass and body fat, right? If you're seeing a trend of body fat going down and muscle mass going up on the impedance, then things are going well. Don't focus on the numbers. But if there's big deviations, in that, then hey, again, we're tracking progress in ways that we can actually measure.
Yeah, I'm actually just having a quick look back through your check-in sheet here. So we're on last week's check-in. It was week 151, which it definitely wasn't. That just shows me how many weeks check-in you've missed over the time, but we'll not get into that right now.
Dude, why you gotta rub that in, bro?
The difference in terms of your measurements is there in a plus of 85.7 centimeters total. With the biggest ones being 15.9 centimeters added to your upper arm and 16.1 centimeters added to your chest. 4.5 centimeters added to your calves, not bad. But take definitely, like, at least it's plus. Like, I feel like mine have gone down. Yeah, I feel like mine have gone down for sure.
Son of a bitch.
And I'll say this, and I don't know how this will make you feel. So whenever you're being judged in a bodybuilding show, they look at the ratio between the size of your calves and the size of your arms, and they're meant to be the same. So your calf measurement is meant to be the same measurement as your arm measurement. So you have about 4 centimeters to go on that. But again, like, it's cool to have that data over the past nearly in 4 years of how much that has changed. And we can see here, waist measurement wise, like, we're pretty much like 1 centimeter, just over 1 centimeter up in terms of your waist over nearly a 4 year period, which is cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And I think one last point on the data. I think the biggest thing is how do you actually feel? Like, how do you feel whenever you're in a surplus? Like, do you actually have energy to train? Because you can't get to a point where you're actually over consuming and the majority of your energy is actually just spent digesting food, and you can't translate that energy into your sessions. And on the flip side of that, whenever you're in a deficit, if your energy is too low because you don't have enough calories, then you don't have the same intensity in terms of your workout. So, like, actually being able to check how you feel. And this is something that I sort of touched on quite a bit with everybody's check-in, because in the fucking world that I live in, with you lot that want to fucking automate absolutely everything, you miss the human side of what does this actually mean? Like, okay, yes, you can pull the numbers and automate all this shit, but like, actually using the check-in sheet and process as a point of reflection as to, okay, right, how did I actually feel in that session? Or, what were my energy levels like throughout the week? Because those are important markers as well, beyond just the actual data and numbers.
100% agree. And, I think, these as a culmination of key data points around weight, measurements, weight going up in the gym or going down. These are all things, hey, is our training program, going the right way? Or, do we need to make tweaks in how we're training to get certain things, framed in a way that allows us to get progress? Or do we need to change something in our diet? Do we need to do certain things around, making sure we hit our protein goals? Or is our protein goals enough? These are things that we can make changes for to continuously, change those progress. But also remember that this is stuff that changes over time. So what you did yesterday may not work today. Like, you always talk about confusing the muscle or different things. Like, there's certain lifts that I just don't do anymore because I didn't feel the progress in them, as I'm going through and doing it. A good example would be the rope pull downs. I found that, and I still use rope pull downs, but I found that just by doing it standing up, I'm not getting a good range of motion, and I wasn't getting the desired results. So I switched it so that I'm actually kneeling. That's a Jay Cutler technique, kneeling down, and I'm able to kind of frame my body a little bit more to get a better stretch in those muscles. So, you're just improving things over time and finding things that work for you and finding things that don't. You see all these influencers are like, oh, hey, change your thing to be this form and do this way. Well, that might work for them, but it may not work for you. Based on how your body is, length of body, everything else.
But even structurally, like, if you think about the mechanics of your body, the more muscle you add, the more that's going to change. And I'll use Helmy as an example. Like, me training and Helmy training is entirely different because of the way that he's forced to move, because of the shape and size of his body. The mechanics of him doing a bench press versus the mechanics of me doing a bench press is entirely different, because he's a completely different shape. Size of the muscle, where it inserts, like the origin insertion, like everything is completely different. So understand that changes over time. And I think to just probably nail in the coffin for this point, picking something just to start with is absolutely ideal. Doing something is better than nothing, but know that you will refine that over time and find out what works best for you. Even in terms of rep ranges or total amount of sets. Some people will respond to like 2 sets of something, and some people need like 10 sets of something to actually respond. So just start and just experiment the entire time, and you'll really start to have an understanding of what works for you, because what works for you, what works for me, what works for Dave, what works for Helmy is all completely different.
Yep. And that's a wrap.
And that is a wrap.
Podcast.
Yeah. Hope everybody enjoyed this, and I hope everybody enjoyed what will be released tomorrow, but last Thursday for everybody. And Justin's podcast, we'll have another one with Bobby this Thursday coming up in Digital Interactions. I sent you the teaser, so you'll get a bit of an insight as to what's going on with that. Awesome. Next week, we'll be able to talk about your experience in Tampa.
Absolutely. Can't wait. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in for this week's episode of Hacking Your Health. Catch you again next week. Later.